Yeah, so I was coaching him on algorithmic strategies, right? So like he kind of developed his own system that worked for his brand. Like there are general truths that change constantly, right? It's like this is how the algorithm is working today. I usually always say what works for one artist is probably not going to work for the other. You have to learn the rules, exist within the rules, but create your own system.
Wait a minute. Hold on. So let me see if I understand this because you're blowing my mind right now, Ryan. And you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I like, there's a thousand things that you just said that I would just want to go like super deep on. What's going on? Welcome to the New Music Business. I'm your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business. The book, third edition, is out everywhere now. Audio, ebook, hardcover, however you like to consume books, you can find it now. Today, my guest is Ryan Vaughn. He is actually the husband of Jessica Vaughn, who was on last week's episode. I had both of them on because they're a power couple in the industry, and they both are doing incredible things on the business side of the new music business. And you heard from Jess last week. They're both, and the thing is they both kind of started as touring musicians, as artists. Jess is a singer and a songwriter and was a pop artist, and Ryan was a touring drummer. He doesn't really do that much anymore, but he's drummed or played with artists like let me pull up this list here: Aloe Black and Ryan Cabrera and Tony Luca and Tyler Hilton, Teddy Geiger, Hugh Jackman. He was on the Greatest Showman soundtrack, actually. BB Rexa. He was in Katie Couric's house band for her daytime talk show. But that's not what we're talking about today. He is now the label manager for Head Bitch Records, and he is also a manager, an artist manager. And today, what we really focused on, because as kind of running this indie label-ish thing, he said label in name only, and he's going to discuss that a little bit more. But as an artist manager as well, he has figured out how to hack Spotify. He has kind of hacked the Spotify algorithm and TikTok to an extent. We talk about that kind of towards the end, so make sure you stick around till the end for that. But really, we spent a lot of the time discussing how much he has learned about Spotify over the last few years and how to grow exponentially on Spotify. And there's a system that you can hack and you can game, and he has hacked it and he has gamed it in a completely legal way that it completely follows Spotify's terms and conditions. So this is not one of these systems, using bots or anything like that. Absolutely never pay anybody who's going to inflate your streams artificially. That is a big no-no, and that will get you removed from Spotify. The reason that none of his artists really have been removed from Spotify is because this is all done legitimately. Legitimately meaning following Spotify's terms and conditions. He's doing it exactly the way that Spotify wants it to be done. So you can basically follow this blueprint if you want, and theoretically you'll have the kind of success that a lot of his artists have had, which is hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of monthly listeners. One artist that we spent a lot of time talking about has 1 million streams a month. And you can do the math. That's thousands of dollars a month just from streaming revenue, and that's just kind of one of these artists' projects. So really fascinating. I learned a ton from this. I've known Ryan for a while, and we've used one of my artists that I manage used Head Bitch Music for kind of distribution via Vidya. And we talk about that a little bit. And so it's always fun to catch up with him. And this time it was on record. So I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. He revealed a lot of secrets, a lot of things. You're going to want to take notes because I guarantee you're going to have a lot of light bulb moments throughout this episode. And it's very exciting. Now, you can find Ryan Vaughn on the socials. Backline Creative is the management company. Head Bitch Music is the label. Mostly it's run by him and Jessica Vaughn. You can find all of us that make the show happen at Ari's Take on Instagram, TikTok, what is it called now? X, Twitter. I don't know. Are we going to still use X, Twitter? I don't know what it's called anymore. But we're on Instagram and TikTok, at least. And Threads, I suppose. I haven't decided. I don't know about X or Twitter. But anyway, You can find me at Ari Herstand on Instagram and Threads. And visit aristake.com, get on the email list. That is where, regardless of what happens with all these social media sites, they come and go and change names clearly. But the email list is tried and true. So if you want to stay in touch, if you want to be on the list to get sent out the most relevant current information about the new music business, get on that email list, aristake.com. All right, let's kick into the show. Ryan Vaughn, welcome to the show.
Ari, what's up, my man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. This is great. This is the Vaughn month. Last week we had your wife, and now we get you. This is great. I've never had a husband and wife duo interviewed back to back. Actually, never had both a husband and wife on the show ever. So this is fantastic.
Sick.
So it was an incredible episode. So you have a lot to live up to. Very big shoes to fill, but I'm confident.
Story of my life.
Yeah. So, similarly to Jess, you wear so many different hats in the industry, and as like starting as a drummer, I guess, kind of like a touring session cat, and now evolved into more in the kind of the business side as an artist manager, a label manager. If I'm curious if you just like, as you are right now, give us a little bit of your day to day. What are you focusing on these days primarily? Tell me, like, just what are you doing these days?
I mean, perfect timing. We just had our company offsite. I don't know if Jess mentioned that, but like we all two employees, me and her, we sent ourselves to like sequestered ourselves to like a hotel room in Palm Springs, and like she meant business. She had a every day planned out, and like we went through everything and kind of answered all these questions. So,
cool.
Right now it feels like it's my life is professionally 50% on the releasing distro label imprint stuff and 50% managing.
Okay.
That takes up pretty much all my time. So our company is called Head Bitch Music. That is the parent company. Mm-hmm. As a lot of people listening might know, it's not cheap to incorporate in California. So my management company is a DBA off of the S Corp until we can justify splitting the two into separate companies. So everything is under one roof right now. So we operate as a custom music company. So when you can kind of put sync in that category, we started as a custom music company. We do a lot of custom music for corporate partners such as Hasbro, Paramount, Viacom, Fox, and some other like miscellaneous children's toys. And then I have my management company where I manage about 8 independent artists. And then we have the distro label side. So I joke and call it the label in name only.
Yeah.
Because we're not actually signing anything to termed agreements. It's a need that we identified during the pandemic that has helped us scale very quickly. So we release a lot of music, like we're averaging 10 to 20 releases a week.
Wow.
And it's mostly friends and family.
Yep.
I would say half of them are not priority. A lot of them are long-term algorithmic strategic releases.
What does that mean?
Instrumental projects. So like a great example is we work with a friend of mine from New York. He's a keyboard player. And he was like, in the pandemic, I don't want to go back to playing wedding gigs. He's got 2 kids. He lives in New York City. He's like, I just can't see myself doing it for another 10 years. And so I had been talking about the release stuff and kind of talking about algorithmic strategies. And he's like, well, I got this idea. So he does solo piano reductions of pop songs, right? So it doesn't cost him anything. It's like MIDI piano in his home studio. He does all the processing. I think he spends like an annual subscription on Lander. So he masters them himself, creates his own artwork, and branded it as the Chillest, which was like his punny kind of like dad meme thing where it's like, I'm going to do a bunch of Taylor Swift covers. So it'll be the Chillest Taylor Swift, the Chillest Elton John. And so
that was the kind band of name? That's the artist name, the Chillest, or is that the
Chillest? Yes, the brand. It's the brand name and the album name, and now his label entity. So we started growing that. We started with like nothing, right? And then now he's we got to I think he peaked at like 250,000 monthly listeners when discovery mode was really working.
Okay.
But he's probably hovering around 200,000 monthly listeners.
Yeah.
He's getting 1 million streams a month. He's had
Holy
little
shit.
to no editorial. He he does like Ari's take level like ad stuff on Facebook. He does like, I think he took the class, and I think he does like $5 a day, and had built, he like combined like the Ari's take stuff with the Shark Attack stuff. The Shark Attack stuff meaning he started building thematic playlists to support his own releases. So he has like a Disney bedtime playlist. He has like your favorite 90s playlist, right? And it's all songs that he's done in these themes. And then he builds the playlists on his the Chillest profile as a user.
Okay.
And so he has essentially third-party playlists that he owns and controls that he can ensure there's little to no bots. And he's just been
Hmm.
growing this thing, and he got to a point where it's like, yeah, he's got like 300 to 400 songs now on Spotify under the Chillest. It's
Wow.
generating over 1 million streams a month now. And then he took all the principles, turned it into like a formula, and launched 4 other monikers. Like he now has Rainy Day Piano, which is the
Huh.
brand, and the name of the record, right? So it'd be like uh, Taylor. He's covering a Blank Space by Taylor Swift. There'll be
Hmm.
the Chillest version, and then there's that Rainy Day Piano version, where he just takes the already existing MIDI samples and just processes them differently. Because there's all uh, these niche demands algorithmically on Spotify. Like I think he launched Chillsy, which is his lo-fi version, where he does
Yeah.
like lo-fi versions of the pre-existing MIDI samples. So he doesn't have to create a new sample, or he doesn't have to create a new MIDI version of the song. He takes the one he did initially and just processes it differently and releases it. And so he's scaling those now
Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a
even
minute. Hold on, hold
faster.
on, hold on. So let me see if I understand this because you're blowing my mind right now, Ryan. And you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I like there's 1,000 things that you just said that I would just want to go like super deep on, but just so I understand this part, you're saying the arrangement that he played on MIDI, he processed it one way in like just a grand piano sound or something, exported that, and that's the relaxing piano
Yes.
mix under the Taylor Swift thing. Now, the identical MIDI file, he just exported it as like a harpsichord or whatever, or it's like a different sound, and then you
I think
leave
it's a
it.
different sound, different, maybe more reverb. Maybe he adds like the Rainy Day one. He took like a rain sample one day in Staten Island and like throws it, mixes it in the background. That's the Rainy Day Piano version,
But it's
right?
the
Because there's a
same.
whole
Yeah.
subculture of like rain samples on Spotify
Wow.
where you
Okay.
can put on, maybe it's like the brown noise stuff where it's like you can just put on a rain playlist and
Yeah.
it's quite literally rain samples for hours. And now people are combining like instrumentals with the rain samples and releasing like the rain version. Like I experienced this through a whole like a children's project, and I had no
Wow.
idea it even existed. And then I went down that rabbit hole, and it was like there's a whole world down here.
I mean, I'm click as you're talking about this, I'm clicking through on his Spotify profile, and I'm like scrolling down to the discovered on, which is all of the playlists he discovered on, and there's the Taylor Swift piano covers, which is by Relaxing Piano Covers, which I'm assuming is him. That's his playlist, right? Or maybe not.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly. No, that's all his.
And right, because there's then on this playlist, it's Relaxing Piano Covers is the artist, but there's also the Chillest is the artist. There's also Relaxing Piano Covers is another artist. There's also Paul Hankinson covers.
So he took like, so we call it, I call it the Shark Attack stuff, right? So like he goes and he
What does Shark Attack mean? What does
So
that mean?
Shark Attack is it's a company owned and founded by my friend Madeline Elise. So
Okay.
they are a digital marketing company, right? So like they
Okay.
kind of introduced me to this idea where like there's a it's really difficult if you're running direct ads to a track or a release on Spotify
Yeah.
to draw a direct correlation between ad spend and stream, right? So like
Right.
because Spotify's not going to give you that data. They're not going to tell you like, oh, all of these streams came from that ad. So
Totally.
they essentially threw a playlist in between because you can
Yes.
see all the streams that are coming from that playlist. So if you start with
Right.
0 on the playlist and
Yes.
you run ads to build followers on your playlist,
Yes.
then when you start putting music on it, you'll have a much closer correlation to how many streams are coming
Yes.
to your releases from those ads.
Oh, totally.
So he goes,
Go ahead.
so he cross-pollinated with other people in his space that he wanted to know. So
Smart.
he's like, man, I know this piano player who does relaxing piano covers out of Germany. And so like they were getting on like quarterly calls just to compare notes on like releasing on Spotify.
Yeah.
And so Jason would be like, I'll add you to a bunch of my playlists if you add me to a bunch of yours. And
Brilliant.
like he started building this community.
And making sure that those were not botted playlists, because you mentioned
Yes.
this before where you're like, he started a lot of these playlists. I mean, I've done this. I've done the same thing. I have this playlist called Low Volume Funk. We're at about 60,000 followers on the playlist. You know, I've been building it up over the last 5 years or something. And, you know, I started it basically in like a Wolfpack fan club Facebook group. And I like
Nice.
got the initial like 2,000 followers just from that, because it was whatever. It's a long story, but like I got, you know, and then of course I was running ads directly to that playlist to build it. You know, of course, never inflated it with bots, but like you said, like, so this is all really crazy, and I'm sure people's minds are being blown right now, and I want to slow down a little bit, because
For sure.
this is a brand new concept for a lot of people. Just to clarify, this artist, the Chillest, your friend, what's his name?
Jason.
Jason. Okay, so this is what we would consider, or what has been considered in the past, a quote unquote fake artist. And like over the
Yes.
years, right? Because like over the years, there's been all of that controversy that these publications have written about, is like Spotify has all of these fake artists. And, you know, but to clarify, Jason is a real person. He's a real musician. He's a real, is not AI. And he is actually making music himself and releasing it, and has figured out, essentially, through these mechanisms, perfectly legal, not fake, and getting real listeners, and making, I would imagine, substantial revenue, somewhat substantial revenue from this. What do you? I mean, you're saying a
Yeah,
million
I mean,
streams a month, or
so yeah, so to kind of like unpack a few of those things. So like to combat that
yeah,
accusation of it, like
fake
being a
artist,
producer project or fake project,
right?
he actually launched a YouTube video or a YouTube channel to kind of as like a companion piece to all this stuff, where he then has instructional videos where you can see him playing these pieces, and then he also partnered with a sheet music company. I forget what it's called, but it's a Music Notes, I
Music
think,
notes, yeah,
and they released, you can also buy the sheet music to his solo piano arrangements.
brilliant.
So it's like it was meant not just as like a passive income stream. It was also, it started as a way for him to essentially monetize these things he was already doing in his private piano lessons. He's like,
Yeah,
well, I've already learned all these songs for the wedding bands and all these piano lessons I'm giving. He's like, well, what if I find a way to like offer these piano lessons to a wider base around the world? And then it's just started evolving. And then essentially so we were early adopters to discovery mode because of my relationship with our distributor, Vidya. I
hmm,
got early access and got to opt in a lot of friends that were releasing through us. And so at this point, Jason had 250 songs. And so we dropped them all in and it exploded. Like his numbers
wow,
just went crazy. And so we also took this, I now had a really interesting story on paper. And so he started creating originals around the Chillest, not just covers. So original piano compositions. And
okay,
then we took the story of where he started and how we built it. And it was all within Spotify's terms and conditions. It was perfectly ethical.
yep.
It was an interesting story. And I pitched it to the artists and label reps, and they started putting his originals on playlists because
At
they
a
were like,
official Spotify editorial playlist, you're saying? Yeah,
this is, we love this. This is what we're looking for. Like, this is a great success story. The
hmm,
analytics essentially match everything that we want to see. And so he started getting editorial playlists from that, right? So now he's on editorial playlists. His numbers are exploding. This is like mid 2022.
uh huh.
And so the algorithm starts pushing it out. And then he starts getting cold emails from music supervisors who are like, hey, found your email on your website. We really want to use your version of Genuine's Pony.
Whoa.
And like, it's funny because he's so new to this side of the industry. He kept forwarding them to me and Jess and was like, is this real? And I was like, oh my God, that's Kira. She's like one of the biggest music supervisors in London. Like, you have to write back to her
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he's like,
Mm.
oh, it looks, okay. And like, so he started getting syncs
Wow.
from this whole world that he was creating,
Wow.
but he diligently recorded and released an album of 10 songs, 10 covers for the Chillest every month for 3 years.
Wow.
So
And okay.
that's how he built the catalog.
Okay, so that's
Like
what I
that's
want to
how
talk
he hit
about.
the algorithm.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I want to talk about is like what was this process? So you said 10 song I'm sorry. Let's step it back a little bit. Because I have so many questions about this. I mean, I'm looking at his
Cool.
profile, I'm like I still don't quite understand why he has all these various artist projects. Maybe let's start there. Why does he have
Great.
the Chillest? Why does he have relaxing piano covers? Why does he have well, how many artist projects does he have and
Yeah.
why aren't
So
they just
he
all part of the Chillest?
so he has the Chillest, right? And it's like so you and I have talked about this over the years. It's like I threw myself in the pandemic into trying to understand digital release strategies
Yeah.
and how the different digital service providers, or DSPs as we call them, how they go through all the music that's coming at them, how they like program editorials, and how the algorithms work.
Yep.
So I got really into learning a lot about the Spotify algorithm, and like I'll reference Shark Attack a lot because my friend Maddie kind of was the first person to really break down the algorithmic response on Spotify for me in a
Okay.
tangible way.
Okay.
And she was like, stop playing for editorials, start playing the algorithm. You'll win, you'll much bigger in the long run than if you go for editorials. And
Yep.
so I got really into it and then started coaching my friends, just like, hey, we're in lockdown number 2. I know you can't go anywhere. You should try this stuff. And so with Jason, and he was like, cool, I have nowhere to go. I have 2 kids. I'm just going to, like, when they go to bed, I'm going to go down in the basement and just noodle around and make some more stuff. So I was telling him, I was like, and here's the spiel that like everyone wants to hear. It's like, how does Spotify go through all of the music that's being coming at them every week, right?
Yeah.
This depending on when this podcast comes out, these numbers will change. But like
Yeah.
the last we heard recently was there's about
140,000
840,000. Yeah, so 840,000 a
songs.
week.
Yeah, yeah, a day. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yes, right. So it's like it's a lot of music.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
and the answer is they don't go through it all. They don't go
No,
through most of it. Like most of it doesn't even get heard, right? Like
no.
if you have 500 monthly listeners or more, Spotify says you're in the top 20% of all artists.
Right,
Like
right.
the loud and clear analytics are so interesting. And so it's like, all right, cool. So it already waters it down. Like what that number is, I don't really know. Let's say there's 100,000 a week that they actually take seriously around the world. And so, you got to you got to make sure you're on your distributor or label's priority sheets because that's kind of where everyone's going. There,
What is that?
I'm even getting replies from people in email when you email editors or artists and label reps are like, hey, trying to cut down on volume. Can you please make sure that this goes through your distributor as opposed to you pitching us directly? We have built a brand as a label, so like I get to kind of continue as is. Like I lobbied for the ability to be able to pitch directly, and they essentially like blessed me and said like you can keep going, but we're really trying to discourage people from emailing directly. So you gotta talk to your distributor. You gotta talk to your label if you're on a label, and like they're putting more onus on labels and distributors pitching and trying to cut back on individuals, managers, artists,
So
so on and
let
so
me
forth,
just
pitching
clarify
directly.
this, what you mean by pitching, because we all know
Yes,
about if you go into Spotify for artists and there's that submit tool, to pitch. Is that what you mean by pitching? Is through Spotify
that's
for artists?
part of it.
Okay.
Yes. So
So
as labels and distributors, they can push through the pitch tool for you on Spotify and Amazon, right?
okay.
But they're pitching at a much higher level, right? So they actually every week turn in what they call priority grids. Like
Hmm.
where essentially like every distributor has a different way of receiving information, right? Which is why you need a digital distributor. There's about 50 to 60 digital stores worldwide that kind of agree to more or less the same terms in receiving information.
Hmm.
There's hundreds of digital service providers, but not the money doesn't always come back, right? Like there's some little tricks and quirks. So most distributors that are listed on the RE Stake site if you go to like, I actually reference that comparison chart a lot. Like
Yeah.
they all deliver music to about the same 50 to 60 stores,
Yeah.
but they all have they all speak different languages, right? So you have to deliver per their terms and conditions, or like their how they want to receive information, right? So like
Sure.
Apple has a very different way of receiving priority pitches than Spotify. And so
Sure.
you rely on a distributor or a label partner to essentially take all the information and interpret it for all those. Like as a labeled operating in the United States, we pretty much only focus on what I call the big five: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Tidal, and YouTube.
Okay.
Those are all, that's probably the majority of market share of consumption in the United States. So like that's, we don't really pitch to Deezer, right? Deezer
So
is like a
how
French DSP.
Yeah. So how are you pitching specifically? So not if you're not
Yes,
talking about the tool in Spotify for artists or in the Amazon tool, like how are you emailing? Are you
correct.
sliding in their DMs? Are you is there like
Yeah.
is there a
So
sheet? Is there like a portal? Like step me through this. What is the how?
yeah, so there is no concrete answer, right? Like this is the problem that I was having in March of 2020 when we started doing the label stuff. I was like, I was asking those same questions. So this is going to be my interpretation of how it's done based
Okay.
on polling a lot of my friends at labels and distributors. And so what we do is essentially we go through our releases every week. So like right now I'm pitching the end of August, right? So we're trying to pitch about 4 weeks out. Like there's so much volume, everyone's lobbying for lead time. So I'm this week I'm building all the pitches for the end of August. I'm highlighting what we call priorities, right? So like I'm not gonna, if we're releasing 20 releases this week, all 20 of them aren't gonna be priorities. Like I
Okay.
know from doing this for 3 years kind of what the threshold is, the barrier to entry, right? Like
Okay.
if you're a brand new artist who's never released anything before, you just created your socials, like it's your first release, you have a very, very, very low chance of getting heard by anybody because they're looking for metrics. They're trying to like, how do we weed through the volume? They create a floor. If you're not at that floor, you're not going to cut through. What that
Yep.
floor is no one really knows. We're kind of guessing based on things that we're seeing and releases that are getting picked up. Right.
Hmm.
Every DSP is now kind of creating a program for supporting new artists. Right. Spotify's is Fresh Find. Apple is Breakthrough. Tidal is Rising. Right. So that's where they start, and if you perform, it'll go up. So as a
Okay.
label, I got verified on Spotify. So like we have a label channel that has a blue check that we had to apply for, and they
Hmm.
go, cool, we believe you're a label, and then they give us a label Spotify for Artists portal, which is like a,
How do you get that? So if there's someone's listening to this and it's like, I'm a label, how do I get my label verified and get that portal and get the blue check mark?
yeah. So you can go through your distributor. So odds are, if you're a label, you didn't build the international pipelines to deliver your music, right? You're
Mhm.
more or less going through someone, either like a larger distributor like Video or the Orchard or AWOL or something like that, or maybe you're cunning and smart enough to be like to really build it out and go through Audio Salad, Fuga, or the more like I call them the pipelines. Like
Mhm.
so you can ask your distribution partner to help you get verified. You can fill out a form and then they'll send it through.
Cool.
Or what we did is like we went through, there's actually, if you go through like the Spotify for Artists like FAQs, there are essentially you'll get linked out to a it's essentially, it's like a customer service portal where you can flag things with Spotify, and one of them is you can essentially request a review to be like a label partner
Okay.
and have a label profile. So like
Cool. So you
again,
got
and that stuff
verified.
changes a lot. So like
Yeah.
it might not be there anymore, or it could
Okay.
not be there in the future. But that's how we did it.
Got it. Cool.
And then the idea
Oh,
of getting verified is like your playlists have because we create playlists to support our artists as well, thematic
okay.
playlists. And as Spotify's continuing to battle third-party playlists and the black market that surrounds third-party playlists, like paying for playlisting,
Yep.
which you've talked a lot about on your platforms,
Hmm.
they're saying that if your playlists are on a verified profile as a label, you can get verified. Then it's much more difficult for people to like scam, right? So there's a whole
Right.
thing where people go and flag your playlist as being fraudulent. They clone it, and then they start like trying to sell access to this like fake version of your playlist.
Oh.
assuming people aren't going to look at the numbers and stuff. So you have a much It's like copywriting your material. It doesn't really matter until you have to go to court, right?
Well,
So getting verified doesn't really matter until someone
yeah.
challenges your authority.
Well, but that is super important. And I didn't realize that this gives you some of these protections because I was just talking to a third-party playlisting company where they are very diligent about only accepting playlists into their network that are not botted, and they research all of this, and they have relationships with all of these playlists and everything like that. Um, and but some of the playlists within their network, um, they get reported by competitors, and then they
Exactly.
lose their title and their artwork, their like playlist cover,
Yes.
and their description. And like, I
That's a
was
scam. Yes.
it's a scam. And because like, and I asked this guy, I was just like, wait, why does this playlist not have a title or album art, or at least like not have a title? It's literally blank. He's like, oh, that's because one of our competitors reported this for infringement or whatever, and then Spotify just instantly, without asking questions for some reason, just removes the title and the description and the album art, or the playlist cover, uh, until it goes through a review process for some reason, and then puts it
Yeah.
back up or something. So you're saying that if it was under your label profile platform with the check mark, it wouldn't get removed if somebody reported it, right? Or in
So and like again, this is all
protection.
based like Spotify hasn't sat me down and give me this explanation explicitly, but like
Sure.
from what I'm seeing, yes, it's kind of like the same as getting verified on Instagram, right? If I were to DM another verified person without a blue check mark, it'll probably go to spam. But the check marked person DMs a check marked person, more likely that it's going to get seen. From what I understand, it's like on Spotify, because of the volume, everyone's guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like if someone flags it, like they're just gonna go like, I'm not dealing with this. Like,
Yep.
but if they were verified, my guess is, or my understanding is, they would give the verified profile the benefit of the doubt and be like, we're not gonna pull it down. We're gonna review it first.
Yep.
But if you're not verified, they just pull it down and then you enter a queue for review.
Yep.
This actually also happens a lot. There was a whole thing in the hip hop community where they figured out that you could essentially hit a release for a copyright infringement, and Spotify essentially takes it offline until the copyright infringement is vetted and that person relinquishes their initial complaint. Because it's kind of like YouTube does the same thing. Like
Yep.
essentially, they go like, we're allergic to liability. We're gonna flag it. We're gonna remove it, and y'all need to resolve it and let us know when it's resolved. Like they don't get involved, and so Spotify has a pretty strict 2 copyright strikes and you're out. Like if
Yeah.
you get 2 copyright strikes as a user, like you were banned from the platform. So it's very serious. But in the wake of this, they have tightened it up. So it's much more difficult to issue a DMCA takedown now. You can't just You have to fill out a ton of paperwork now and assume legal liability for even issuing one.
Oh,
So they
thank
are
God.
trying to
This
crack
must
down
be a
on
new
this.
thing because
Yes, new.
yeah, and thankfully I want to say it was Elias. Like, did he write about this for Billboard, or someone wrote about this for Billboard? It was either Elias or Kristen, but um it came to light, which yes, it's like the new, and it's like the new digital way of going after your rivals in like
Dude,
rival gangs or rival artists or whatever. But like this happened to a friend of mine where they released this single and video, and the video started to take off, and it was like this global collaboration between this African artist and I believe it was a Nigerian artist. And so it's like there's getting all this like global recognition, and press is writing about it, and the video starts to go, and it's starting to go viral, and the song's doing really well on Spotify. And then one of his enemies or whatever issues this a copyright claim on both YouTube and Spotify, and right away, like you said, without asking questions, they ripped it down. YouTube took it down and Spotify took it down. And the manager hit me up, was like, what are we supposed to do? We put in tens of thousands of dollars into marketing, which it took them months to get the song and video back
oof.
up. And like, it just killed the momentum. All this momentum was happening. and then they ripped it down, and they lost all their momentum and lost all their marketing money that they put behind this because they,
Brutal.
and so the system was completely broken. I'm thankful to hear that now Spotify has implemented a system, and hopefully YouTube has done the same, where they won't just rip it down, take down, ask questions later or whatever. Because yeah, it was a completely broken system.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's all byproduct of the volume, right? No one knows how to handle the volume, and like
Right.
YouTube is a great example of kind of like where the industry is going to have to go because YouTube is unregulatable, and like everyone just kind of accept it. It's why YouTube
Right.
it is what it is. It's like everything's ad supported because
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
you issue one takedown. Michael Jackson and Prince notoriously had armies of attorneys, right? And like no one was doing anything illegal. Like
Yeah.
there's a compulsory license. I'm allowed to cover a Michael Jackson song and release it, but they didn't want that, so they would just had attorneys sending cease and desist letters, hoping that the threat of like a legal title head would cause everyone to stop, and it
Right.
worked. I think most of the time, but
Yeah.
like as soon as one got taken down, 100 more showed up. So I think that's what everyone's starting to worry about on the digital release, on like
Yeah.
a DSP standpoint, not YouTube, but like Spotify, Apple, Amazon. It's like, dude, there's no barrier to entry. Like
Mm-hmm.
people are going to be releasing all the weird likeness AI created tracks. So like how do you police this? And
Right.
so I think a lot
Well,
of these systems are because of that.
yeah, no, totally. And we just had Alex Mitchell, who's the CEO and founder of Boomy AI. They're the music AI company that made all the headlines a couple months ago for um, they basically Spotify removed thousands of their tracks because there was like fraudulent streaming activity or whatever. Because this is the other side of the coin. So we've been talking about the quote unquote like legitimate way to essentially game the Spotify algorithm to promote it and make it work. So I want to get back on this kick that you were talking about
Cool.
with the Chillest, because I think this is a
Yes.
fascinating story. We still didn't get to why he
Yes.
has multiple artist names. So let's get
Right.
back
So
to
we got
that.
it. Yeah. So I was coaching him on algorithmic strategies, right?
Yes.
So like he kind of developed his own system that worked for his brand. Like there are general truths that change constantly, right? It's like this is how the algorithm is working today.
Yeah.
And so he developed I usually always say what works for one artist is probably not going to work for the other. You have to learn the rules, exist within the rules, but create your own system. So he developed his own system, and it started to really work. And it was a combination of releasing uh, usually collected works, meaning like EP or LP of releases. So 3+ songs, right? So like not just singles. Like he found success through volume, and it
Okay.
was very cost effective for him to do a 10-song LP every month because there's very little cost for him, right? There's not a lot of overhead. It's
Sure.
just time. So he was pumping this in, and then he started running ads or building playlists and running ads behind the playlists. And he just started watching his numbers growing linearly. And then right when we hit discovery mode in like April or May of 2022, it switched to exponential growth. We just started everything exploding, including his ads and plays. Like everything started growing super fast. He's like, awesome. And so he did some quick math and he's like, hey, I think I can do this kind of growth for other monikers and keep the cost low, but I can apply everything I've learned to these new monikers and I think I can grow quicker.
Mm.
And so he's like, I'm going to take these pre-existing MIDI samples and I'm going to create like, he's got the Rainy Day Piano is his. He's got Chillsy, which is like his lo-fi chill version. He's got JWEX, which is he does lo-fi original music. And then he's got Jason Amazing, which is a standalone like kids project that he did. He released music that he was writing for his kids. He's gonna kill me, by the way. What he's like, I'm giving away all of his
This is
business
great.
secrets. It's public information as far as I'm concerned. So
Yeah, damn right.
he just I'm going to take this MIDI piano thing and I'm going to repurpose it, right? So I'm going to keep the cost even lower now because like I'm now taking something I've already done, so it's significantly less time. And I'm going to apply these other different filters and processing and whatnot, and maybe I add like a rain sample behind it, and like I'm going to put it into this new artist project, right? So we separated them because the Chillest algorithm got so strong and it's so focused, right? The
Yep.
Chillest is solo piano pop songs. We
Yes.
experimented with him offering like, hey, I'll do it started with my management clients. Like I'll do like stripped versions for anyone. Just like send them over. I'll do the piano part. They can sing it, and like they can do whatever they want with it. We'll split the master and stuff.
Cool.
And it became just so apparent that his algorithm was so focused on his solo piano stuff. It's like, should probably just leave it there.
Got it.
Like let it do its thing. And so any other new idea or new variation, you're going to want to create a new profile to build a new algorithm, just like what people do on TikTok. If you're a big influencer, say like you're a food influencer and you want to launch a music career, your music posts are going to tank on your food influencer channel. So they create new channels to build a new algorithm. A lot of the principles are the same when talking about Spotify algorithms, YouTube algorithms, Instagram, or TikTok algorithms. They just have slightly different rules and conditions and slightly different cycles, right?
Yeah.
So Spotify is a 28-day cycle. The writing is on the wall. Monthly listeners is 28 days. Release radar is 28 days. Everything's 28 days. So when you start unpacking, it's like, cool, like they want me to release it every 28 days. That's generally challenging for most artists.
Yes.
But if it doesn't cost you very much to do it, and you can do it for a long period of time, and Music Business Worldwide actually wrote an article kind of about this on TikTok. If you can do a consistent release schedule for about 18 to 24 months, that is about the time it takes to really trigger the algorithm and make that switch from linear to exponential growth.
So just to clarify, if I'm understanding this correctly, and I'm going to repeat it back to you, is he created multiple artist projects because he had different essentially sounds for each of these. So he wanted it's even though it's just him, he had it's like different artist projects. It's just like and to because I think a lot of artists struggle with this, is this like, especially who are producers, who are like, well, I can make all kinds of music, so why don't I release my Americana songs on the same artist project as my hip hop songs, as my electronic songs, all under the same artist? It was like, well, that's confusing. And then I think of it, I usually explain it from a fan's perspective. I'm just like, well, a fan's not going to really understand. Be like, you might have fans that really love Americana music, but they're not really into EDM. And if you release an Americana album and then you followed up with an EDM album, your fans are going to get confused. They're like, I don't understand who you are, what you're doing, or whatever. And like, yes, you're talented enough to be able to make all different kinds of music. A lot of artists and producers are super talented, and they can create in a wide range of genres. But the best practice, not just for fan understanding, but now you're saying the algorithm understanding, is to really focus the genre and the style of music per artist project. So this guy, Jason, the reason that he has multiple artist projects, even though they're all like somewhat similar, I guess, because they're all like solo-ish, piano-ish, whatever. But like you're saying, he got so focused with the style that the Chillest is like organic, acoustic, piano, pop covers. And then you want to do the Chillsy, which is like lo-fi with maybe some beats or what. I haven't listened to these, but like, and since one could argue, wow, that's the same artist, you're just adding a beat to it. What's the big deal? But what you're saying is that it's not just really even a fan understanding thing. Like the algorithm is so niche and so specifically focused. And even like I'm looking at like the editorial playlists is like relaxing solo acoustic piano. It's like literally playlists are called that. So like the Chillsy ones with the beats are not going to fit on that playlist. Only the Chillest will fit on that playlist. And like his solo original songs aren't going to fit on relaxing piano covers because they're not covers. So he got so focused on meeting like what the algorithm is demanding, and so that's the reason for all of these separate artist projects. Is that kind of right?
Nailed it. Yes. Okay. It's like it's a business plan, but it's also like he's becoming the Chillest is becoming a real artist, right? It's also now becoming like the parent brand for all these baby projects, and like it's algorithmic maximization, but he's a real artist, and it's like he's making real art. And like this is just a way of, the joke I use a lot is like Garth Brooks and Chris Gaines. It's the same guy writing the same songs. one has a country accent and some pedal steel. The other is was a pop artist, but it's the same stuff. But he got to hit two completely different audiences with a subtle rebrand. We all knew it was Garth Brooks,
Yes.
but people ate it up because it was fun
Right.
and it was good.
Yeah, no, I love that. And yeah, and I'm looking at this Chillest profile and holy shit. I mean, what, he's got hundreds of songs out by this point in the last 3-4 years or
Yeah.
something. So you're saying he released an album or an EP or like a batch of songs every month? Because right, the traditional thinking was like a song every 4 to 6 weeks was like the cadence theoretically, or like some people were doing the waterfall effect, where you lead up to an album release with like a single first, and then like a 2-song album second, and then like a 3-song album of those first 2 songs, and the third, and then like the 4-song album, which is the first 3 singles plus the new one, and like you lead that up to the full album release, which is like what the waterfall method is. You're saying he
Yes.
just dumped a full batch of songs every month, not one single, but like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, every month.
That's it. He was
Damn.
just like, he made it his goal. I think we released a couple singles when he was just like, I'm behind. Let's release a single to keep the pace going.
Sure.
And then I'll drop the full release like the next month just to buy myself some more time. But generally speaking, he was dropping a 10-song LP every month for about 2 or 3 years. And then like as he launched the other projects this year, he's had to obviously scale back because there's only so much time in a day. So the Chillest is releasing like singles and EPs and every now and then an LP, because he's also creating, he's dumping EPs worth of material for these new ones to get the algorithms going and running ads and creating thematic playlists that he owns and controls for each of those things.
Yeah.
And we're watching it just grow. And the goal is for this to essentially be his retirement plan. Like if he keeps releasing, like the algorithm is going to keep finding more and more listeners because that's its job. If he keeps pumping content in it, he's training the algorithms so they'll be able to find more listeners sooner than if he was just dropping a single every month. Because the release radar it's in the name, right? So a release is the album level, a track or a song is the track level, right? So when you're talking in music legalese or music business, bro, it's a track is what they call a song, and a release is what they call an album. So release radar is album radar. So like the part of where waterfalling came from specifically on Spotify was like, wow, release radar guarantees everyone that it's going to work the music at the entry level algorithmic, the entry algorithmic level. So people who follow you or have listened to you in the last 28 days, right? It guarantees it's going to do that for 4 weeks. So week 1, you get to pick what song you want the algorithm to push out to everybody else. But weeks 2, 3, and 4, the algorithm decides what other tracks from that release it's going to work, right? So like it might decide that like I'm going to send Ari a different song from that release because he really liked that first song, or I'm going to re-deliver it to Sarah because Sarah didn't listen to it at all. So we're going to try to get Sarah, and like Jess, she consumed the whole record, so we're going to send the B-sides. Like you get 4 weeks of the algorithm working all tracks on that release radar. So like you waterfall because it's going to keep working the previous releases. You might say, my focus track for that week is the only unreleased song on a waterfall playlist. So everyone gets the same song on that first day. And then the subsequent weeks 2, 3, and 4, the algorithm will work other tracks from that release. So if you go to the bottom of your release radar, you're like, wow, these songs all came out last week, but there's other tracks from that release. So if it's a single, you're going to get the same song over and over again for weeks 2, 3, and 4. But if it's a multi-track release, you're going to get other tracks delivered to your release radar. Release radar, you'll see, is like it's much longer than just the new releases.
Right.
It's everything that's come out in the past 4 weeks.
Oh, shit. Okay, so that is the best explanation of why to waterfall I've ever heard, because I didn't quite understand. And a lot of people, ask like, well, why waterfall if you can just release the single and the single's going to get included on release radar? Because that's what they say is just like, as long as you submit that single in Spotify for Artists at least 7 days before it comes out, it will hit all of your followers' release radar that Friday. But what you're saying, which I didn't actually realize this, is that like for the next month, so theoretically, if you only release an album a month, or let's say like even like a 4-track EP a month, those 4 songs will theoretically rotate throughout people's release radar, is what you're saying?
Yep,
Crazy.
the
Okay.
algorithm decides all that stuff. So actually,
Got it.
on waterfalls, a quick update just to like blow your mind a little bit. Speaking with friends at major labels and
Yeah.
other distributors, like the new trend, because things have changed a lot. Like Apple's now making it so you can only, you generally would release in a traditional waterfall the whole record if it's a long playing record to Apple and the songs illuminate. Well,
Yes.
now they will only illuminate up to 50% of the record. Uh, and they're calling it's like instant gratification tracks. So they're not going to illuminate past that. So because of that, and because of all the issues that we're having on Meta and TikTok, right? We talked a lot
Yeah.
of the TikTok waterfall releases, where it's like you get duplicate sounds, and when you take stuff down, the sounds disappear, and TikTok has no motivation to merge that stuff or
Yes.
help you at all. So
Yep.
what people are doing now is like they're only waterfalling on Spotify, right? So
Yes.
they're delivering something twice. So you're releasing a series of singles. The singles are singles everywhere but Spotify, and
Yep.
then you deliver a separate release that is just the waterfall release for the Spotify algorithm. So we're watching it evolve before our
Yes.
eyes
Well,
because of the algorithm.
yeah, and that's really important for people to understand. Like what we ran into, just to explain a little bit deeper, what you're referencing is when we waterfalled an artist this last year, their album. You know, after the full length album came out, we took down all the previous quote unquote single releases, which were, I think we did 5 single releases, but on each of those we waterfalled it out. So single number 1 was just 1 song, single number 2 was 2 songs, single number 3 was 3. So, instead of having the discography on their Spotify profile have 6 releases that were essentially like 6 single names in the full album, we just like took down the previous singles and just have the album there. However, when we issued a takedown, it took down those releases everywhere, and namely on TikTok. It basically told TikTok, remove all of these songs. You no longer are authorized to have these singles available, which fucked all of the videos that had previously used those songs. And so all the official sounds. So then when you tap the sound, it said the copyright owner no longer gives permission, blah, 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 blah. And there was no way to get that back. So that was a really unfortunate thing that happened with issuing takedowns. So never issue a takedown to TikTok is essentially
Yeah.
the moral
So
of the story.
as you saw, it's like technically they're supposed to be able to merge sounds as long as they're the identical timestamp, right?
Yeah.
But there's so few people on the administrative side working, and there's so much demand, it just doesn't get done. Like you were
Yeah.
even talking to a TikTok rep, a friend of
Yeah.
ours, and it's like
Yeah.
she's just so inundated with volume, like it just never happens. So
Right.
to those out there listening, a hack that we've found that seems to be working for some artists, if you're going to do this, is like essentially if you're going to do a waterfall campaign, you can release everywhere but ByteDance, right? Don't distribute the music to TikTok, and you can go and create a sound on account
Mm-hmm.
and just deliver sounds to TikTok. So what
Yep.
I have a couple clients doing who are really heavy into TikTok is we release everything through HBM. We purposely don't deliver to ByteDance, which is only TikTok right now.
Yep.
And then we set up their TikTok sounds in their Sound On, which is TikTok's distribution service.
Yes.
And so but like the Sound On platform is the only platform. It's like I don't know if you've used it. It's like you can pick like up to like the microsecond of your clip, which they don't really allow other distributors to do.
Oh
So
wow.
you can
Okay.
get into like all the amenities are in Sound On. Like it makes
Yeah.
sense. They want you to use their platform, but like
Because
gives you extreme oversight if you're going to get into TikTok sounds.
Right, because typically most distributors will allow you to choose the timestamp of the part of the song that you're delivering to TikTok, because you can only deliver 60 seconds of a sound. That is like what the copyright that is like what TikTok has the license for right now.
Yes,
And so what you're saying is
important.
like, yeah, right, which is important because if you deliver the full more than 60 seconds, they'll take it down, or they'll mute it, or they'll remove it. And and this is something that I've gotten this question over the past, is like, this hasn't always been the case, because people had
Yes.
sounds that went viral 2 years ago that were 2 minutes long. And then as of like 6 months ago, they're like, oh my gosh, the sound got removed. Why did it get removed? Why did the copyright claim blah, 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 blah? And the answer is because it's longer than 60 seconds. And TikTok changed the licensing. And so now they only really are allowed to have songs that are 60 seconds or less on the platform.
Yeah, that's the majors, right? That's the deal they made with the major publishers and major labels. Like anything under 60 seconds is cool. Anything above it is a sync license because you're putting music to picture. Really, I'm sure everyone will be interested in this. Like, as of today, from what I understand, you're allowed to deliver a primary sound, which is the initial sound, and it feels like they're putting pressure on that everyone for that first sound to be a full 60 seconds, and then you can deliver, I think, up to 4 additional sounds. So we're talking about commercial sounds, right? So there's 2 types of sounds. There's the original sound, which anybody can upload, which is generally not monetized, right? Mm-hmm. So there's 2 types of accounts, a personal and a business account, right? Mm-hmm. Personal and business can use original sounds because they're generally not monetized. Mm-hmm. And if you deliver a commercial sound through your distributor, you get a primary commercial sound, which they are hoping will be up to 60 seconds or at least 6. It'll be a full 60 seconds. And you can get 4, the primary commercial sound, the monetized sound through your distro or label. And then you can deliver 4 additional sounds for that ISRC. And they want them to be in 15, 30, 45, or 60 second segments. But like Sound On allows you to circumvent that. But like most other distributors, I think because TikTok's trying to deal with, again, volume, like just the sheer mass of sounds being thrown on the profile. And how like copyright enforcement and monetization are so challenging on TikTok right now.
Right.
So that's kind of the rule set right now.
Just to clarify, when you're saying commercial sound, because like, Ari's sake, we have a business TikTok account. And when I go to try to use a sound, more times than not, it says this sound is not licensed for commercial use. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. So in order for a business to use a sound, right, a commercial sound, you need a license, right? That is a sync.
Okay, so just because you distribute your song through a distributor doesn't, and you're saying you distribute it as a commercial sound, doesn't mean it's giving, it's going in the commercial licensable sounds library within TikTok for a business to use.
TikTok CML, the commercial music library, right? The CML on TikTok, you have to opt into that through your distributor. And essentially by doing that, you are agreeing to a revenue share for the money made on, like, let's say, TikTok is charging businesses. Let's say they charge them a fee, or I've not used a business profile that's tried to use sounds from the commercial music library. But what I read when it initially was launched and they asked people to opt in was, it's like a 2% revenue share to the creatives. Essentially, it's like 1% to the sound recording owners, 1% to the publishing owners or composition owners of the money made from the use of that song, right? So if TikTok makes $10,000, you get each side gets $100.
Is that documented somewhere? Are these actual numbers? Are you saying?
Yeah, that was in the. That was really I think a year ago when it came out. It was in the terms and conditions. That was in the opt-in sheet. So like, generally speaking, if you opt into the commercial music library, you also have zero control over who uses your music and how they use it.
Yeah.
So it's you're essentially letting them. And from what I understand, also if you distribute through Sound On, you automatically opt into the CML.
Oh wow,
that might have changed, but that an early part of Sound On was like you by default by using it. In the terms and conditions, you accept it without reading it. You opt into the CML. So pretty much anyone can use your music, and it kind of destroys the potential for a sync license. Like Dolce & Gabbana wants to use an Annabelle Lee song, and it's in the CML. They're gonna I can just go use the CML for little to no money. I don't need to license this from you.
Right. So it's everyone's benefit not to opt into that, really. And you should really get their you should negotiate the sync license.
They're essentially production music libraries that they're asking creatives to opt into, right? So it's like the commercial music libraries is a fancy way of framing it. It's like usually businesses are paying blanket licenses to use music royalty free from these libraries, right? So like Meta and YouTube have entire teams that buy production music from creatives where they own everything and they dump it into their their library so you can use
Right.
royalty-free music, right?
Yeah.
Because they've bought it
YouTube has
out.
that. Yeah.
They're now getting people to opt into the commercial music libraries for little to no money, so
Right.
businesses can use their music without having to license it.
Right. So, okay, I want to get back to Spotify for a second, and just to put a bow on the story of the Chillest, and actually just to kind of take that, because I I guess well, okay, you mentioned discovery mode a few times, and I do want to talk about discovery mode for a second, and then I also want to get into talking about how you've used this strategy of releasing, or just your understanding of how the Spotify algorithm works for artists that are not releasing an album a month. You're more
Yeah,
like
for sure.
traditional, because I know you manage artists that are more traditional artists,
Yes.
in the sense that they're touring, they are, doing sessions, they are like actual artists that are building a fan base. They're not just, releasing an album month. That's not their style. So first off, let's talk discovery mode, and then we'll get into your other
Cool.
artists and how you've approached more traditional style release schedules with more traditional style of frontline artists. Talk to me how discovery mode has evolved from when you said it was amazing in April, May 2022 when they rolled it out to you, to where it's at now, over a year later, where they've since rolled it out wide to virtually everyone, kind of at the top of this year. And what you've noticed has shifted. And for those of you who don't know what discovery mode is, if you log into Spotify for artists and you go to the campaign section, if it is enabled for your account, meaning if you work with a distributor, most distributors have this enabled, like DistroKid and CD Baby do. I actually don't know if TuneCore has enabled it yet for everybody, but I know some of their artists do. But either way, if it's enabled through your distributor, it is, and you have songs that have surpassed a certain threshold of radio streams, radio, and kind of they're calling automated
Autoplay.
autoplay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Radio autoplay streams, and so radio streams is just like everybody knows the radio. You go to an artist and you're like, I want to play the Taylor Swift radio. So they'll put some other songs within Taylor Swift's radio that's not Taylor Swift, of course. And then autoplay is like after you finish listening to an album or a playlist, the algorithm, Spotify will autoplay songs that they think are similar to whatever you just listened to, whether it's that album or the autoplay. And so what discovery mode does is they will essentially say, we will juice this for you, meaning if you opt in some songs to discovery mode, you're going to make a 30% less commission, 30% less money on the streams that these songs get this month, just from radio or autoplay. Because what we're going to do, Spotify is going to do, is we're going to take these songs and we are going to juice them up a little bit, meaning we're going to put them at the top of the radio playlist or at the top of autoplay, and you'll see a difference. And so you're essentially paying a 30% commission. You're taking 30% less money than you would normally from a stream. But the thinking is, well, my thinking has always been, I'm happy to make 30% less money on the streams versus having to pay for ads, which, that's an indirect way, pay for like Instagram story ads to send people to Spotify. It's like, all right, I'll make a little bit less money on Spotify ads, or on Spotify streams just from radio and autoplay, if I'm going to get exponentially more streams across the board, which will trigger theoretically all the algorithms, which is the idea behind it. So now tell me the reality behind it.
Yeah, I mean, like I usually tell people, imagine it like imagine like that hierarchy as a playlist, right? Like if you're in a Taylor Swift radio, like discovery mode bumps you to the top, and you still have to perform well. If people are like skipping or not saving or not engaging, like it's going to give up and let you float back down and off, right? So like you still have to perform well. Spotify knows exactly what streams are coming from that movement. So it's not from that song in general. It's just from the streams that you're getting from discovery mode placement. Right. So like that's important for people to understand. It's not like I opt in and now I'm making 30% less on this song altogether. Like, no. And you can go in and it breaks it all down for you. So when it started, it was available by every distributor, but you had to ask your distributor to opt in. And so
Oh,
they
okay.
would get a spreadsheet from Spotify every month that goes, hey, TuneCore, these are the songs that are available
Yep.
to opt in to Discovery Mode this month. So you had to know to go to your or you had to have a contact at your distributor and know this existed to even ask.
Yes.
And so because it was so kind of low profile, most people didn't know it existed. There was little to no competition, right? So like you're opting in and nobody else is doing it. And the results were just like awesome. You're like,
Hmm.
wow, like this is, man, watching people like double their monthly listeners.
Yep.
But like if you had like, we had one, like friends of ours who I didn't release, but we were just comparing notes. They had 500,000 monthly listeners and they doubled to 1 million through Discovery
Wow.
Mode.
Wow.
And what was interesting, it was like you could drop in an entire catalog and the algorithm would be like, all right, these 2 to 4 songs, these are the ones that people like, right? And so everything
Yep.
else would float down. You don't have to opt those in anymore. And like just keep opting in those 4 songs for months. And
Yep.
it just kept like growing and growing and growing. And so everyone's like high-fiving, like, this is amazing, like, because
Right.
we're making more money. Like, it
Yep.
wasn't, I guess we're getting a reduced payout. Spotify's taking a commission. But it was
Hmm.
like, everyone was making more money, more streams, fans, like, followers were going up. So it was working.
Yep.
So January 2023, again, the problem is volume. They're trying to roll this out to make sure everyone can participate, right? They're not trying to be gatekeepy or weird
Yep.
about it. They're trying to roll it out so everyone can use this program. Let's call that was the beta, and now it's going into alpha, and they want it to be publicly usable. So here's the catch: the distributor had to opt in to allow users to opt in themselves, right? So Spotify's like, we're going to put a tab in Spotify for artists so people can opt in, but
Right.
only essentially the rights owners, while you might be an individual rights owner, you're kind of giving that authority to the label or to the distributor
Right.
when you release through them, right? So like the rights owners essentially have to opt in. So
Yes.
the major labels and their subsidiaries are never going to opt into Discovery Mode. So I'm sorry if you're releasing through AWOL, The Orchard, InGrooves, ADA, Level, any of that stuff. You're never going to be allowed to be in Discovery Mode because the majors aren't going to participate in Discovery Mode as of today, right? So like they will never be able to opt in, but everybody else, the TuneCores,
They don't
DistroKids,
want to
CD
make
Babies,
30% less commission. They don't want to make
they don't
less
have to.
money. They don't have
Yeah.
to. Yeah. Right. 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 Okay. Continue.
So everybody else was like, dude, I'm getting more and more requests. We don't have the customer service bandwidth to keep opting in this one song for
Right.
this artist and
Right.
these 10 songs of this artist. So
Right.
they were like, heck yes, sign me up. Like, I'm going to opt it in. We'll let our people decide. And
Yep.
so they did a lot of, I wasn't on the development team. I'm not an insider at Spotify. This is all based on what we saw and people we spoke to. And like trusted colleagues like Ari and whoever else will get on calls and be like, are you seeing what I'm seeing?
Right.
So what we saw was like, all right, it's now available to everybody.
Yes.
Everybody's opting in. And like all of our numbers just went down. And I was like, all right, growing pains. It's growing pains, all
Yep.
good. Uh, we'll keep going. And like, I did it for essentially 6 months from January to June.
Hmm.
I talked with my management clients and our release clients, like, I'm going to continue to opt you in, but slowly scaling it back. And like, we went from opting in everything and seeing what would happen to just opting in select things. And as of July, it's like, I'm not opting in at all. And
Wow.
what we saw was like very like little to no return. And like, there's lots of theories of what's going on. Is that like Spotify operates on I think we talked about this with some other people. Like Spotify operates on a URI system,
Yep.
right? So like everything has its own like Spotify social security number,
Yeah.
right? So if you have a song that's on multiple releases, that song has one ISRC, right? So that's how all the streams are combined.
Right.
It's like, oh, this ISRC is on all these releases. But we all know it's the same song and sound recording. So all those streams from those releases will funnel into that one ISRC. But that track will have a different URI for each release. So
Yep.
Blank Space by Taylor Swift will have a different URI on every single release that it's on.
Yes.
That same sound recording. So like we right, the theory is that like it caused extreme chaos behind the scenes because all of those URIs for that one ISRC would be available to opt into discovery mode, which creates extreme chaos in the back end.
Yeah. And especially not to mention if you take down previous singles like we did, and this is what fucked us
Yes.
for the artist, that I was managing and that we released with you is kind of we took down. So I had opted in songs from the album release, and because they were available to opt in, and then we took down the previous singles, but the streams maintained and the playlist inclusion maintained because it was the same ISRC number. But discovery mode doesn't work on ISRC, like you said. They work on the different code, the URI. And so I was looking at my discovery mode that month, and it was literally negative percentage growth. It was like it was 0 and below. And I was like, and I hit up my contacts at Spotify. I'm like, what the fuck? What happened here? Like, how is this going down? And they're like, oh, that's why. Right, exactly, because they're using URI versus ISRC. I'm like, why are you doing that? Why every other system on Spotify?
Like someone didn't think of that?
Yeah, I'm like, everything else connects ISRC codes. Like the streams maintain when I take down a previous one and put up the album version. If there's 3 different versions on 3 different releases, the streams all connect that. You know how to connect that. You know how to connect the playlist inclusion, maintains the same. It's not like 3 of the same tracks on the same playlist, whatever, but just discovery mode didn't work. So it was kind of a mess. And so that's interesting that you're saying that with your management clients right now, you're not opting in any songs because you're just seeing there's just no net positive anymore, huh?
It feels like everyone's on the waterfall and discovery mode train, right? So like we're not really waterfalling anymore and we're not really doing discovery mode anymore because it just feels like, I don't know, we're seeing this general trend where like everybody's numbers are going down on Spotify. Like
Yeah.
followers are going up, but like monthly listeners are going down. You can see Spotify frantically adding new analytics tabs constantly. They're highlighting very specific things, those specific things being active audience, right?
Right.
I think Spotify has a passive listenership problem, right? And like there's lots
Mhm.
of things coming out right now, like editorials and articles and videos about the homogenization or playlistification of music, or
Mhm.
like most of the music being put on Spotify right now is to get on like these passive playlists to generate money,
Like the Chillest.
like the Chillest, right? It's like
Right.
so it's like that is cool. It's a business model, and like Spotify created this ecosystem, and that's just kind of how people are exploiting it.
Yeah.
But it's causing all these issues for people who are creating and releasing real music, like artists who want to go on tour, and artists who
Right.
want to get sync licenses, and
You
artists that
even
want
got
to.
caught in the trap. You call it real music.
Yeah,
I know
totally.
what you mean. But
And
by
so much
artists that
easier to
are,
like
yeah,
say it. Yeah, so
pursuing
it's like
pursuing an artist career. Right.
it's like, and it's challenging. It's like like you interviewed my wife, Jess, who has many monikers. That's kind of where a lot of this came from. Is I learned by working with her in the sync and licensing community,
Yep.
where like that she was creating monikers based on because she was writing in different genres, and to not
Yep.
confuse music supervisors, she'd be like,
Yes.
no, Laces is my main artist project. J Poland is kind of like a dark pop thing. Like she's like, I
Yep.
can do all these things, but like we weren't doing it for Spotify purposes. And then we started to realize that we had backed into this like benefit on streaming.
Yep.
So it's like, she had all these producer projects, but Laces is her main project, but she has a day job. She has to have a day job to be able to pay for all the music that she wants to create and release and
You're right.
market. But it's like that doesn't leave her a lot of time to say go on tour 6 months a year.
Right.
Right. So
Wait.
it's like,
So let's talk about. Yeah. No. Totally. I get it. Like, one, why aren't you waterfalling anymore? If you just said that the
yeah,
release
yeah.
radar benefits and release radar actually benefits you if you do waterfall, why are you not waterfalling?
So so if we were to waterfalls as moving towards Spotify only, and it's
Okay.
just workflow, right? It becomes like
Got it.
it's so much extra time and effort for all parties to essentially set up the waterfalls, maintain the waterfalls, take down the stuff to make sure like the end package is the way you think. And it's like now we've created all this other chaos where like,
Right.
all right, sounds have disappeared from TikTok. We have an
Yep.
issue right now where as we're seeing through a few waterfalls that we already started,
Yes.
every time the new waterfall releases,
Yep.
all the previous sounds disappear from Meta.
Oh
Dude,
shit.
it is the biggest nightmare. It's like, all
Oh,
right, cool. The new release came out, and we have to now flag with our distributor and get them all re-delivered. Because for whatever reason, every time that comes out, all the previous sounds disappear, and it's
From like
made a
Instagram stories, you can't put a sound
correct
or on reels or whatever.
reels and
So, yeah.
stories, and like
Okay.
Facebook sent an apology to the distributor, like, yeah, it's a tech issue, it's new, it's a volume issue. We're working on patching it. So sorry, and like they got them up, and it
Yeah.
was discoverable. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
it comes out on Friday, we flag it, they don't get it back up till Monday or Tuesday. You miss
Right.
that entire like push. The artist is bummed because they feel like, you know, that's the one of the only ways they know how to promote their music.
Right.
So it started to become just like,
Fine.
man, I'm at a certain level, waterfalling doesn't seem to provide a lot of return,
Okay.
right? I've been finding that with artists that have like 6 figures of monthly listeners, or like 50, like let's say like 20,000 or more followers, it's like the need for waterfalling kind of wanes. I find it to
Right.
be more successive with newer projects when you're trying to gain momentum. And like, I'm
Okay.
still very like, hey, this is a really great for you to kind of come out of the gate and develop followers and streams quicker. And
Okay.
as like kind of, we call it the algorithmic hack, but within the terms and conditions. And like the problems for them aren't as magnified as it is for artists who have been doing it a lot longer with a much bigger fan base or
Sure.
marketable fan base. So it's like, that's kind of, this is my manager brain now talking, not my distributor brain. It's
Right.
like, it's become, there's not a lot of ROI for a lot of the more established artists to waterfall anymore. If you go and actually look at the results too, it's like they're becoming more and more negligible the bigger the artist becomes.
Yeah. So let's talk with your manager brain on. How are you approaching release schedules with the artists that you manage? And feel free to use their names or not,
Yeah.
yeah, anonymously, whatever you want. But like, talk to me about like some levels of these artists, and just how you approach release schedules with them.
Yeah. So I'll speak generally. So we start,
Sure.
most artists, like every artist has to kind of check off this box. Like, have you released consistently every 4 to 6 weeks for 18 to 24 months? Like, kind of want everyone to go through this to trigger the algorithm, right? We're
Mm,
going to shock the system and get it
wow.
working in our favor. And then we can look at the results and then decide how we're going to go. So once we can get through about 2 years of consistent releasing, and so where do all these numbers come from, right? Like 4 weeks, we talked about Spotify operates on a 28-day cycle. Like, they need creatives to be pumping music in every 28 days to ensure that their customers are getting new music every Friday, right? So that is important to Spotify. That's why they wrote it. That is the business model. So we have to acknowledge it, whether we like it or not. If you want Spotify to work for you, you kind of got to follow the rules. You don't have to. If you just want to release an album once a year, drop it all at once. That's up to you. But if you're looking for growth and you're looking for um, to build a career and to build brand recognition on Spotify, you got to play by their terms and conditions, and releasing every 28 days is one of them. That's hard. Most artists don't have the bandwidth financially or emotionally or even just the time to do that. That's very expensive, and that 4 weeks turns around really quickly. So you don't see a huge trail off on weeks 5 and 6, right? If it's like a graph, it's like at 4 weeks you have all the momentum, and then it kind of peaks, right? And then if you're not releasing at 5 weeks, it starts to like come down. 6 weeks, it comes a little more. The longer you wait, the longer the tail is, and then it kind of flattens out. But if you keep releasing, you can kind of see your numbers, like I say, grow. It grows linearly, and like we see a trend that like at the 18 to 24 month mark, you start to see it switch to more exponential growth, like an exponential curve. So a linear curve being a straight line, an exponential curve being a curved line. So you see that exponential growth trigger at about the 18 to 24 month mark. So I try to get my management clients to adhere to releasing every 4 to 6 weeks for about 2 years, just to jumpstart their algorithm. And let's say we get through that 2 years, we then look at, all right, is this working? Meaning, have we hit that exponential growth mark? Are we seeing it grow? Are we getting more followers, monthly listeners, streams, saves? If it's a yes, cool. Maybe we can start putting a little more buffer in between the releases. and maybe we're going every 6 to 8 weeks now, because now the algorithm is working for us, and we can start to uh, put a little more time between releases and put a little more of our resources into promoting the releases and giving them a longer tail, and not have to be switching as frequently, because now the algorithm is working in our favor. And I've seen, as you get more followers and monthly listeners, you can put more and more time in between those releases. Like Taylor Swift can just drop an album every other year if she wants, and her numbers are going to go up because she has the biggest audience. She has a strong algorithm. So that's kind of what we've been seeing, and how I'm trying to encourage my management clients to come out of the gate. But at the same time, we have to live at the margin and within reason. Finances are really difficult. It costs an average of like $5,000 a single to pay your producers, pay your mixer, pay mastering, pay a designer to do artwork. So if you're releasing every 4 weeks, that's $60,000 a year that you're investing into your artist career. Plus, they said like the what's the line? It's like $70,000 is kind of like, I don't want to say the poverty line, but it's kind of like that is kind of like the base level that you need for food, clothing, and shelter, according to the LA Times and their partners, to even exist in Los Angeles. So now you're at $130,000 a year to just get by and to pay for all your masters. And let's say you need a marketing budget and like money to eat out or to go to the movies. Now you're looking at like, maybe you need $150,000 to $200,000 a year to exist as an independent artist in Los Angeles, right? So it's not possible, right, for most artists. So like I say we got to live at the margins. I'll usually advise my clients, it's like, here's what we need to try to do. So a lot of times we'll just stop and we'll front load a ton of content, like 6 to 12 months worth of releases. And then as that's releasing, we'll go back and get the next 6 to 12 months in line, so we don't run out and we can get into this like perpetual cycle where they're not exhausted emotionally, physically, and financially. Whew.
Whew. All right, Ryan, I've had you here. This has been so jam packed and incredible. We learned so much. I can't believe we packed so much into this episode. You've really and revealed a lot of secrets here. So I have one final question that I ask everyone who comes on the show. What does it mean to you to make it in the new music business?
Ooh, that's a good question. Full disclosure, I will say Jesse brought this up because she's like, "Oh, such an interesting question. It's so hard to answer on the spot." So I had some time to think about this, and I personally, like, let's say when I was operating as a side musician in New York City, right? So I was a side musician for about 10 years. To me, at that time, making it was paying my bills solely from music income, which is like a very altruistic thing that I think a lot of musicians go through. Like that day when I'm cost neutral and paying everything just from creative work. And like that was awesome. And I got to do that. But once I checked that box, I kind of lost the fire to be a side musician. It's like, man, it's just, I'm not seeing the future. Like the wages aren't changing. There's no back end.
Yeah.
Like my friends are like, making tons of money, like writing songs, doing other things. That I was just a drummer, and it's like playing on records, I get royalties, but like touring musicians, that's it.
Yeah.
Like the pandemic taught us all those lessons.
Yeah.
So like I started pivoting. So I got into the music business side. So now what does it mean on the other side of the aisle, from creative to like a entrepreneur business side? Like I feel like I'm making it. Like I don't think I've made it on the business side yet. I feel like it took me about until now, so 7 years, to fully reprogram everyone from my past that like I don't work as a drummer anymore. Like I no joke, I was still getting texts last year from like wedding bands in New York, like, "Hey bro, we're way down on the sub list. Can you do this wedding in Syracuse?" And I was like, if you want to fly me and my gear out from LA and pay me a sick rate, like I'll consider it. But so I feel like I'm just starting to get identified as a music business professional. And I think, Jesse and I talk a lot about like our ultimate goal is to make the industry more equitable for those who are marginalized the most. So women, queer, and BIPOC artists. So I think we'll feel like we've made it as a company when we actually start to see and feel real change for those marginalized communities. Like that is kind of our overarching goal. And we tend to mostly work with women, queer and BIPOC artists. So that is our passion project, and that is what I think we need to feel like we're succeeding.
Ryan Vaughn, thanks so much. It's great.
All right, you're the best, dude.
Peace. Today's episode was edited by Mikey Evans with music by Grassroots District and produced by all the great people at Ari's Take.